Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3 video. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references. Obviously, everybody's still dealing with the PTSD from Joel dying in Episode 2. How is the show going to recover or not recover from that? So we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. But the episode title was The Path, which is both a reference to their path to Seattle, Ellie and Dina, but it's also the name of a song from the Last of Us games that also plays during their journeys. It also played at the end of The Last of Us Season 1. There's a lot of table setting they do in the episode, like setting up Isaac, the WLF, the Washington Liberation Front, Abby's group that she belongs to right now, the Seraphites, but also one of the big things the show is doing, maybe people have realized this, maybe they haven't, but if you look at the trailer footage, there's a lot of scenes of Joel and Ellie together that we have not seen on the show yet, meaning that Joel will still be part of the show, just not in present day. Sort of feels like the show trying to have its cake and eat it too, like can we have the WTF moment of killing him off, but then just bring him back all the time? One of the big questions that a lot of people had, especially people who had not played the games, is how is Bella Ramsey, who plays Ellie, going to carry the show going forward without the help of Pedro Pascal, who seems like he's just blowing up all over the place right now. He's super popular. He is the Mandalorian. He's going to be in the Mandalorian Grogu movie next year. He's going to be in the Fantastic Four later this year. We're going to see him back during Avengers Doomsday next year. So there's literally two giant movies coming out in next May right next to each other where he's going to be a main character. So a lot of people went into The Last of Us show, especially people who had not played the game, people who just enjoy HBO series, enjoy Pedro Pascal. He carried most of Season 1, so the idea now is that it falls largely on Ellie's shoulders, Bella Ramsey, to carry the rest of the show. Currently, as of me making this video, I have not seen the rest of the season yet. Some people have seen further episodes. We will see what winds up happening. I think the idea is they're trying to sort of spread a lot of the work of carrying the show to a bunch of the other big characters they're introducing now, particularly Isaac, for instance. He's a big antagonist that we'll meet next week, but they sort of tease his character a little bit in roundabout ways with the WLF this week. But the episode starts in the direct aftermath of the attack on Jackson with them burning the dead infected outside the city walls. Burning is one of the few very effective ways of actually dealing with the fungus. They don't really have counter agents or bioweapons to use against it. That was the whole point of Season 1 with Ellie's immunity, is they were trying to find a way to fight against the fungus. Tommy gets a brief moment at the beginning of the episode to see Joel's body that Ellie had brought back with Dina. Probably one of the biggest changes from the show early this season is that originally it was Tommy there when Joel was getting killed by Abby, not Dina, and Tommy has his own separate revenge mission that he sets out on eventually. Now it seems like the show might not do that for him, like he might just stay in Jackson this whole time. Most of his scenes in this episode were dedicated, I think, to justifying why on the show version he would stay in Jackson and not want to leave. But in the games, Dina does go with Ellie to Seattle. It was just that she wasn't there when Joel was actually being killed. I think one of the reasons why they made that change is to just give Dina more of a reason to want to go to Seattle and want revenge for Joel, like want justice for Joel.
I loved him too, you know.
Notice they focus the camera on his watch on his arm because Ellie will eventually take it from his box. Tommy leaves it with his things that he meant for Ellie to have. He then says a prayer asking him to send his love to Sarah in the afterlife, Joel's daughter who died prior to the events of Season 1 during the initial outbreak. We saw her during Season 1. Back in the hospital, Ellie comes to, flipping out, still fresh with PTSD. It seems like she's been reliving Joel's death over and over again. Like it just continues to happen while she stays at the hospital, because then it jumps forward 3 months and explains that she spent that entire time recovering in the hospital. One of the next big changes to the episode is the actual intro itself. So we'll see if they change this more in the future, but what they do is they show the initial outbreak across the world of the fungus, just like they do in previous episodes, but instead of ending with Joel and Ellie at the end, it's just Ellie because there is no more Joel. I don't know if they intend on changing the intro again in future episodes. We will just see episode to episode, but at least my assumption would be if they change it again, they'll just add somebody else to that outro standing next to Ellie like Dina. But after the short time jump, they show you the town has been recovering from the attack, rebuilding that whole time. Tommy and Jesse doing regular work. Everyone's still traumatized emotionally, but physically everybody seems like they're fine again. After the doctor clears her medically, Joel's therapist Gail comes in. Seems like she's been coming to see Ellie, trying to learn more about what's going on, help her with her PTSD. No surprise, Ellie doesn't want to have anything to do with her, just wants to get rid of her as fast as possible, so just lies and tries to say everything she can to get her to leave her alone. But later in the episode, Gail confirms she knows that Ellie was lying to her about Joel because she knows Joel told her he did some wrong to her, but she doesn't know exactly what he did. The whole idea is that during the 5-year time jump, Ellie at some point realized that Joel had lied about what happened in Salt Lake City with the Fireflies, and that's why she was so mad at him in more recent years. She goes back to her house with Joel. There are memorials from everyone from the past 3 months, and she goes into the main house for what seems like the first time in a long time, not just because she was at the hospital for 3 months, but if you remember, she moved out of the house, out of her regular room into the garage a long time ago. So it seems like she just avoided going into the house for a much, much longer period. This is also the reason why there's no mattress in her original room, because she just moved the mattress to the garage when she started sleeping there. She goes into Joel's room, sees the carvings that he had been working on when he died, in the box of his belongings that he wanted her to have, including his watch and his revolver. This scene is also right out of the games too, where Ellie finds his watch. But the idea is that seeing the revolver sort of snaps her back to reality and reminds her of her desire for revenge against Abby. Dina comes to check on her, they catch up, and then she tells her the truth about knowing everything about Abby, the WLF group in Washington, the next piece of the puzzle in order for her to get her revenge. They play up the Dina-Joel father-daughter relationship a little more than the games did. Like, they weren't really a thing in the games that way. Mostly, I think, so that it makes sense for Dina to want to be with Ellie on her mission, like to want to get revenge of her own too. The way they explain their pair is that Dina is meant to be the brains of their operation, like she's the one that's actually good at coming up with plans. She's also the person that has all the important information, like Abby's identity, the rest of her group. She knows who the WLF is, or at least she knows their name and knows where to find them. She mentions Nora. We actually see Ellie confronting her in the trailers too. That's also directly from the games. Even though this episode represents a much bigger divergence from the games, for the most part, like in a bigger story way, they do try to follow the games as closely as possible.
Abby.
The way that Dina explains it, it was Eugene that told her all about the WLF in the regional groups that exist up in that Washington area, which is also meant to be foreshadowing for the Seraphites that we see right after this scene. Part of the idea is that a lot of groups either rose up through or as a result of Fedra, or people like Isaac who are working for Fedra that then splintered off into their own groups. And all these different pockets of people all over the United States are all at constant war with each other for survival. In the world of The Last of Us, Fedra is kind of like their version of FEMA, Federal Disaster Response Agency. We saw some of them during Season 1, so there are pockets of Fedra resources that people try to control after the apocalypse. That's basically where all of Isaac's group's military gear comes from Fedra. She is very wrong in saying that they're small enough for them to handle. They're a much larger group than they've ever faced before, larger with more firepower than Jackson, just to give you an idea of the scale. That's why they have that tag scene at the end showing the smaller convoy, that's not their entire group, that's just some of their group, just rolling through the middle of town. They really want to make it seem like Ellie and Dina have gone from the frying pan into the fire, like the problem is now so much more insurmountable. Then Tommy tries to talk Ellie out of going after Abby, saying that they need to have a big committee meeting with everyone voting on it, which winds up going exactly how you think it's going to go. Do not put anything to a committee that you want to get done. Forming a committee is what you do when you don't want something to happen. Ellie's statement is also kind of ironic here too, where she talks about Joel going off to get revenge if it had been Tommy that they had killed. In the game, Tommy does eventually take off to get revenge of his own. When he threatens Dina with rendering detail, what he's talking about is fat rendering, which does seem very bad. That would be a form of punishment in the apocalypse. Stinky up real bad. He then tells Ellie where they buried Joel's body 10 miles south of town so that she can visit it on her way to Seattle. And we meet our first Seraphites. They're a group of religious zealots, totally nutters, even though the way they present them here, they want to make them seem more sympathetic and they want to make the WLF seem more terrible. That's not exactly what's going on here. Both of their groups are meant to be terrible in slightly different ways. The Seraphites are just absolutely bonkers. They're a little bit more like an actual cult who live on a small island nearby the Seattle area that are in sort of constant battles with the WLF, like we see during this episode. Notice the symbols on their backs. They all dress similarly, and they all have the scarring on both of their cheeks. When he mentions the Prophet, she was the leader of their group until she died 10 years ago. They mention Ezra, she's also another Seraphite from the games. Their whole belief system is taken from the original Prophet's words, which was turned into religious text. They mostly believe in living in harmony with nature, avoiding traditional civilizations like the cities that most people live in. So they live a very agrarian lifestyle. They view taking resources from traditional means like cities or modern technology as being evil. When he talks about keeping them safe with distance from war, they're talking about the WLF, who they then try to hide from, which we find out is unsuccessful because they all turn up dead later in the episode. When his daughter says demons, they actually view the infected as demons. Wolves, he says, because of the WLF symbol. So later when Ellie and Dina find their bodies, it's just implied that the WLF spotted them in the woods and just gunned them all down.
Tell me, you feel safer?
We go back to Ellie training in her garage room with Jesse's help. There are a couple Easter eggs just around the walls here. She's got a Matrix poster, because remember when the initial outbreak happened. I can't quite read the labels on all her records, but she does have a lot of 90s music. This looks like a Neil Armstrong moon landing poster. She's got a Radiohead poster on her fridge. Part of the irony here, like this should be pretty obvious when she's standing next to like literally any other person, but Ellie on the show, Bella Ramsey, is a tiny, tiny little girl. The only way she'd actually be effective in a real fight is with a weapon like a knife in close range or like a gun, something like a crossbow or ranged attacks, complex traps. The only time she'd be effective in like an actual one-on-one fight would be if she were fighting another tiny little girl, kind of like Abby. So like it would make sense if she were trying to have a one-on-one boxing match with Abby. This is probably one of the reasons why they didn't want Abby on the show to look like Abby in the games, who's a little bit more She-Hulk, like she is swole in the games. If show Abby looked more like video game Abby, she would crush Ellie like a tin can. Jesse says he's on the council now. He implies he's not going to support her revenge plan, and you kind of already know how this whole council meeting is going to go. Like a whole lot of deliberation, people trying to say their piece, but ultimately them voting not to send a giant group of their people up to Seattle. Basically just setting up the idea that Ellie's going to be sneaking out on her own just with Dina. Carlisle's whole speech here is basically restating the themes of Season 2 in the Last of Us 2 game. Basically, revenge is bad, like nothing good will come of revenge. His whole message about forgiveness just comes back to bite Ellie in a really big way. To his credit though, Seth, who was a big crap bag in earlier episodes, now supports Ellie, fully desired for revenge, showing how far he's come around. They kind of wind up bonding in their own really messed up way. What he says, though, is wrong. Like, his whole line of thinking is wrong. Thinking that they'll come back, the WLF will come back because they didn't make them pay, that's completely bonkers. The whole idea of the game is the exact opposite. It's all about the destructive cycle of revenge and how it destroys everyone's lives. When Ellie talks about her mouth getting her in trouble in ways that can't be undone, there are like a lot of things you could point to her doing that lead to that, but mostly I think it's meant to be a reference to the way she left things badly with Joel before he died. Their last interaction was that big fight, and how much she regrets it. When she tries to play off her whole revenge mission to the crowd here like it's more about justice, that's also her just lying to herself. She just wants revenge the same way that Abby did. Like Abby was spouting at Joel about wanting justice for the dead Fireflies. Really, she just wanted her own revenge for her father's death. Tommy and Gail's whole conversation about Ellie and Joel just seems like it's justifying Tommy's reason for staying in town and not going off on his own revenge mission. Dina then comes to help Ellie on her mission, also getting help from Seth and supplies, and her horse Shimmer, which is also from the game. This is also her same backpack that she had in the games that she also had during Season 1. And even though they significantly changed Dina's storyline in the season so far, Dina did go with her in the games to Seattle. They stop by Joel's grave, she says goodbye, leaves some coffee beans. Joel loves his coffee. Then they do a speed run montage of their trip to Seattle with a couple of stops, mostly for character development, like just developing their whole relationship. When she says the first person she killed is too messed up to talk about, she's talking about her mother and the circumstances of her death, which they revealed during the events of Season 1 in the flashbacks. She was played by Ashley Johnson, who voiced Ellie in the games. They even just used Ashley Johnson's singing at the end of last week's episode too. She then talks about the second person that she killed when she was older. They also did the flashbacks to her time before she met Joel during season 1. They pass by that same group of Seraphites that we just saw earlier in the episode, RIP to all of them, revealing that they were basically just gunned down trying to run away from the WLF. That hammer did absolutely nothing to protect that little girl. Like I said, I think the reason why they presented the group in this way is mostly to set up the threat of the WLF and make them seem even worse, so that Ellie at least feels more justified in wanting to get revenge, like, oh, these people are terrible that they killed this group here. When really this is kind of misleading, like they're trying to make the Seraphites seem like they're very sympathetic, when really they are also just as crazy, if not even more crazy than the WLF. Both groups are meant to be bad in their own particular ways. Them arriving at the city limits here, looking out over the entire city, is also right out of the games. They mention Curtis and Viper movies, again, Joel's favorite. They break a whole bunch of horror movie rules, saying that there aren't many more rules that they have to worry about. There'll be even less sooner. There are a ton of them out there. Like the WLF is a huge group, which we see right after this. Speak of the devil, one of Abby's friends that we just saw is back, played by Danny Ramirez, who you probably remember is Falcon inside the MCU. We just saw him in Captain America Brave New World. He'll be back in Avengers Doomsday too, so like a lot of stuff happening with him in the Marvel Universe. He's currently on watch duty, but doesn't spot Ellie and Dina, but they just want to show you the organization level of their group. Like, even though it seems like they're not that big, they are massive. And they have a ton of weapons. Like, they are very well equipped. All their weapons, their armored vehicles here, everything is from Fedra. So the whole idea is they just want to make them seem like they're nearly invincible compared to these two little girls that rolled up to the city thinking that they're going to get revenge on Abby. It seems like next week's episode 4, they'll deal mostly with Isaac's backstory, introducing that character. He's actually being played by Jeffrey Wright, who also voiced the character in the games. Also, because we just talked about Danny Ramirez, Falcon in the MCU, he is also the Watcher Uatu in the MCU.
You see, time, space, reality.
Really just a coincidence because there are so many Marvel movies and TV shows, you're bound to have a lot of overlaps between actors showing up in different projects. Isaac, though, is meant to be one of the major antagonists of The Last of Us 2 game, so really interested to see what Jeffrey Wright does with him in the live-action version and if there are any differences from the video game version. But everyone just post all your reactions in the comments below given what happened in episode 2. Most of this episode just felt like a lot of table setting, like just sort of like the calm before things really get crazy again, especially up in Seattle. My full episode 4 video will post after they release it, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. In happier Pedro Pascal news, we probably will get a new Fantastic Four trailer soon. There's a bunch of big stuff coming up this week. Click here for all my Last of Us episodes, and in nicer Pedro Pascal news, here's the Mandalorian and Grogu trailer video from Celebration. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.